Ah, Watch Dogs. It had so much potential, you know. Most Ubisoft games do, even the ones I despise, because where there's a mess, as there often is with Ubisoft, there's usually so much beauty too. And where that dichotomy is found, potential is rife. Usually wasted potential, like with the case of Watch_Dogs. It was too repetitive, they said, too boring, too empty, too derivative, they said. And sure, maybe it is all of those things, but it isn't only those things, and not all the time. The one thing that is true of Watch Dogs is the downgrade. I mean, bloody hell, what is this? 2014 was one hell of a year for Ubisoft. Watch Dogs, Unity, Far Cry 4 all downgraded to an immeasurable degree. It even continued to The Division the following year, and while that deceit marred Watch Dogs on release, it would be unfair to hold that against the game now. I'll still hold it against Ubisoft, because fuck Ubisoft, but Watch Dogs is so much more than its disappointing graphical downgrade. And hell, you can make it look pretty nice on PC these days, which I did, because fuck you, it's my video, I'll do what I like. In the decade since its release, because yes, it has somehow been 10 years, Watch Dogs has found itself in an interesting spot. People kind of like it now. Maybe it's how the identity of the franchise was warped over time. Maybe it's the bastardization of Watch Dogs in the form of Legion that gives the first an air of prestige, the first of its kind, never given the chance to spread its wings before they were clipped. Where have I heard that one before? But like the first Assassin's Creed, I find that despite some of its rudimentary mechanics, Watch Dogs has a focus not often found in Ubisoft games. Games that like to litter their world with side stories and distractions and incoherent stuff. Watch Dogs has stuff, but where it differs from a bad game is that it's mostly conducive to a single vision, to the journey of a jaded vigilante seeking revenge amidst a city on the cusp of becoming a neo-noir dystopia, where the people put their faith in the hands of corporations, where your every move is tracked, where everything is connected. Clever, right? Everything you do is connected, but that's also the motto of the game. It wants you to draw these connections, invisible threads that bind the experience of Watch Dogs together. I mean, it's all over the damn marketing and UI. The phone will send out a plethora of strings every time you activate it. And at the center of that web, our anti-hero. The unlikable Aiden Pearce. But he sure as shit isn't the problem. It's all of you. Nobody understands Aiden Pearce. Unlikable? Yes. Unintentionally? No. The game, in all facets, is deeply focused on its ideas and themes, but how well it executes it all is not so straightforward. But it sets out to execute it whether you like it or not. Strap in, folks. We're doing Watch Dogs. The game sets the scene. A man already making bad choices. A heist, a quick job, easy money. Maybe not. Aiden loses his niece. It breaks him. It breaks his family apart. He wants one thing only, the people responsible for killing his niece, a girl he can only remember through fragmented nightmares and the haunting image of the only thing that remains of her. I think you'd have to be an actual psychopath not to be on board in some capacity, to see where they take this, the journey that will unfold. Why did Lena die? Who did this? To what end? And through what brief an introduction this is, I'm on board. We pick up 11 months later in what most games would be the climax, but here it just sets the stage. Aiden's found the man who did the shooting, Maurice Vega, but that's not enough. He wants names, he wants answers. He won't stop until everyone responsible is dealt with. Maurice is already bloody, but Aiden beats him more. Nothing will stand in his way. So Aiden is a little ruthless. Wouldn't you be too? Geordie Chin, our lovable psychopath pal, holds on to Maurice and intends to pry him for information across the game. We, however, have an escape on our hands. We're in the May Stadium, and we have to get out. We're taught the basics of hacking, stealth, and black out the entire stadium with the press of a button. Watch Dogs starts the game by putting you in control, a situation that in other games would come as a stealth challenge. In Watch Dogs is circumvented with technology. And you know what? It works. As you walk on through the bar and exit onto the streets, you feel powerful. And that's a strong thing for a sandbox like this to do. It's a strong opening, it sets the tone, it teaches mechanics, it characterizes. It's brilliant. From here, we make our escape back to our safe house, where only memories and trauma is waiting. Trauma that Aiden escapes on a daily basis by doing all he can to stop other people from feeling what he feels. To fight crime, to be a vigilante. But Aiden isn't the only one with trauma from what happened. Juggling both sides of himself, we go to our nephew's birthday party. We meet the kid whose only personality traits are being in 5th grade and being treated for PTSD. So yeah, that's pretty fucked up. They do a great job of characterizing that too. Jackson is completely non-verbal, and it's actually quite heartbreaking. If you wanted any more reason to be in the fight with Aiden, well, this is it. A 10-year-old scarred so bad they can't even speak to their uncle. Yeah, I'm ready to find out who did this. The journey to get there, though, is a path not so efficient. And before that, we're gonna need a bit of a nap. Maybe without trauma-induced PTSD visions of the past interrupting you. And even a troubled man like Aiden Pearce has no trouble catching 40 winks when using a mask from Manta Sleep, the sponsor of this video. I mean it too. Oh boy, this thing is phenomenal. I often sleep during the day because my line of work means my entire life is topsy-turvy. And let me tell you, these old flimsy eye masks don't hold a candle to what Manta provides. It has an adjustable head strap, so no matter your head size, you can adjust it to fit just right. It has soft, breathable material. You can't even feel this thing on your head. But if you need to, they offer options for that too. Steam and cooling masks for warm and cool temperatures. They've gone and thought of everything, even a weighted mask, and if you need to fall asleep to the sound of rain and music, they have an audio mask with Bluetooth, so you can listen to beneath the mask as you drift off to sleep. This thing blacks out the world, and it's a goddamn game changer for anyone who sleeps as much as I like to, especially with the lights of my computer lighting up my entire damn hallway even at night because I made a 5-hour retrospective that takes 32 hours to render. It's 10% off if you use offer code LazerzZ with the top link in the description. Thanks a bunch to Manta for sponsoring this video. Despite that initial downgrade, I still feel Watch Dogs is pretty impressive visually. The city feels dense and varied in all of its districts, and that creates a sense of immersion as you roam around. From the dense city centre with the varied and authentic skyscraper lights, to the calm streets of Parker Square or the rough hood territory of the wards, there feels a distinct sense of identity to the city of Chicago and a deep detail also. Sometimes, more often than I care to admit, it pays to just walk. As Aiden slips his hands into the pockets of his battered leather coat and it flutters in the breeze, and just wander the streets with all the exaggerated swagger of a middle-aged white hacker to take in the details. From shop windows to the traffic and crowds, Watch Dogs orchestrates a symphony of detail. From the dense ambience of traffic to the murmurs of passers-by, drawing you into Chicago's embrace from the very start. The artists who worked on every little alleyway and building and street and interior worked to craft something with detail, a detail you don't notice unless you stop and smell the roses, and doing so is heavily rewarded with vibes. Taking the time to stand on a platform and ride the damn L train is certainly not an L. The love I have for this city is only deepened by the weather and lighting system, which is bolstered again by the Fall of the Windy City mod that takes real data from Chicago during the autumn and uses it to enhance what was already there. A lot of mods tend to alter the game's artistic vision in favour of effects that make your ape-brain happy, but Fall of the Windy City works to preserve Watch Dogs' vision, and it's something I feel is crucial to allowing the game's potential to flourish. Early morning, rainy nights, Chicago is bursting with life and ambience. But it's not just that, it feels oppressive too, especially for someone like Aiden Pearce. This city is controlled by CTOS, a high-tech system that is citywide. It controls cars, the traffic lights, bank accounts, the steamworks under the roads apparently. Anything that is plugged into electricity, CTOS controls, which makes the entire city our playground for interactivity. It's also a citywide surveillance system. It has everyone's information, and everyone's information is tied to facial recognition, and so hackers like us can use it to our advantage, or simply to check out what different people have going on in their lives. The people of Chicago are just as important as the city itself. Using the profiler, we're able to lock onto anyone's face and see their occupation, how much money they make, and the most important thing happening in their life, which isn't deep, but it doesn't have to be. It provides just enough character to make it feel like these people are people, and that we're at a distance prying into information we shouldn't be privy to. It's the most basic fantasy of being a hacker. This is added to by hacking into specific points around the map where you can literally see into people's homes, private moments, death, everyday life. It's eerie, and it's fantastic. There are so many different scenes, all of different tones, all of different situations, and it only acts as a means to make Chicago feel even more alive. And it helps then that they're often genuinely interesting. But more than that, it's the way NPCs act too, from stopping to tie a shoelace to running in the rain and pulling out umbrellas, or the conversations you'll notice as you're just passing by, sometimes related to CTOS, sometimes not, but always interesting. They'll also actually queue up at ATMs, and then use them, and then leave. Like, what? That's awesome! I love that! And not just because I'm English and I love a good queue. Walking the streets of Chicago never gets old, and boy, do I love doing it. You'll see people playing with drones, having arguments with their spouse, or playing music in public. It's oozing with the life of a real city, and I don't think that gets the props that it deserves. Coming out of games like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry, Ubisoft created an open world teeming with people doing things that people do, and it does wonders to make Aiden's place in it feel grounded and tactile. Listening both on the streets and on the radio gives you insight into how people view CTOS. They like it. People are rarely critical, and I don't say that as a criticism. I think that's brilliant, because when are people generally critical of new technology, especially new technology that makes their lives easier? They praise it for helping them with their schedule, for allowing them easier access to their money, for the maps. Nobody questions it. That's believable, and it makes fighting back against Bloom feel more important because the people are oblivious. Well, it would if you actually fought back against Bloom. Bloom exists, criticism for Bloom exists, but rarely do you do anything that sees you fighting back against the corporate hold they have on the people of the city, and that's a shame. The game does dabble in the critique of citywide surveillance and that the situation Chicago is in is a bad one, but it never really does anything with it other than Aiden vaguely saying, "Oh no, this is a bit bad, this," when you hack into CTOS towers around the city.
Looks like CTOS is compiling every intimate detail from private citizens. It's no wonder DedSec despises CTOS.
It feels like a waste for a game like this, with this setting, to never really bring the setting itself into the spotlight, to question it, to critique it, to fight back against it. It's an interesting premise, but that's all it is. With that being our main setting though, hacking the CTOS is a crucial part of the gameplay and the core promise of what comprises Watch Dogs' uniqueness, and that's worth talking about. By crucial, I mean it happens a lot, I don't mean that it's deep. It's made to feel good through the use of sound design and visual effects, the lines of connectivity spewing from your phone as it reaches for the possible connections. However, this game bangs so hard on its vibes it forgot to do anything with its mechanics. Hacking feels railroaded, it's specific, it's not particularly creative. You soon come to learn that you can hack very specific things and you can do one single thing with them. It's binary, on or off. Turn on a car alarm or turn it off. Open potential cover or close it. Raise a lift or lower it. That's about it. And after 25 hours, it makes it feel incredibly shallow. It becomes another part of every encounter and every puzzle, but it never feels particularly creative or dynamic. With a game all about hacking in an open world that should have been the focus, it should have been the equivalent of Just Cause 3's chaos, allowing the player a set of tools and multiple ways to use those tools and combine those tools to engage with scenarios in a host of different and interesting ways. I'm not a fan of Watch Dogs 2. I think the tone and vibe detracts from everything I loved about the idea of Watch Dogs, but there's absolutely no denying the game is mechanically superior in every way, and delivers on the promise of Watch Dogs' sandbox in a way that the first just doesn't in a raw mechanical sense, and the fact that it also has dogs that you can watch. Alright, so one of the main ways this game has you interacting with the game is through cameras, and they're everywhere. The city's practically living under the lens, which of course adds to the whole oppressive vibe. But hey, it's not all bad news. See, those cameras aren't just for show, they're part of your power. You use them to scope out your surroundings, to tail targets, heck, even slip into buildings without setting foot inside. That's power, and it feels good. But you're not just watching the action, you're directing it from the shadows, watching cutscenes unfold through the eyes of a security camera, using the environment to move enemies into position, to control your surroundings. It's simple, but it's genius, and it's all part of the fantasy. You're stepping into the shoes of Aiden Pearce, bending the city to your will, becoming the proverbial fly on the wall wherever you damn please. That's the magic of Watch Dogs, using its bare bones mechanics coupled with its character and atmosphere to make it feel good, even when it's mechanically basic. One of the ways they make hacking a mechanic outside of a button prompt is by hacking minigames. And I like them. You heard me. You thought I was just going to do what everyone else does when confronted with a minigame mechanic and shit on it, didn't you? Well, I'm not. I think these are fun, especially when coupled with being timed. You have to be quick, think fast, and solve the puzzle. They don't tend to overstay their welcome and are actually engaging. I enjoy doing them, and if you don't, you're a big baby. I don't make the rules. There are plenty of hackable objects that are not so useful. A little horse thing that plays music, a singing trout, a radio. They have little impact, but despite that, I think they're fun. I like that they exist, even if they don't have much to contribute to the actual game of it all. The little things are immersive. The hackable signs, however, yeah look, these were outdated in 2014, and they haven't aged any better in 2024. Dude, come on. Watch Dogs is full of a lot of this sort of cringe. Stuff like hackers saying uber pwned when they hack you, which I will give credit to because it made hitting him with my car all the more satisfying. And you'll be hitting a lot of people with your car because the driving can get slidey. I found myself drifting round a corner many a time to simply hit a group of pedestrians, which wasn't my intent as much as the judge may try to tell you that it was in court. Despite that though, I like driving in Watch Dogs. I like sliding around corners. I like driving fast against oncoming traffic much like in real life. I like the vibes and ambience too. The rain, the nights, the glow of the headlights in the dark. Watch Dogs creates a mood with its driving, much like the rest of the game, and the weight of the cars makes that so. It's a difficult thing to describe because on the surface, it's not as mechanically deep as something like GTA or as intentionally arcadey as something like Saints Row, but it gives the cars weight and grit, and it makes weaving through traffic during chases high-octane fun, and driving in a game like this lives and dies in its chases. So how do they fare? Let's take a look. Being chased by cops is the main way you'll experience chases in Watch Dogs. They'll send out a scan if a crime is called in, and if you're detected in one of the yellow search cones, they'll begin to pursue you, and the longer the chase goes on and the more crimes you commit, the more forces that are sent after you, from regular patrol cars to armoured trucks to helicopters and road spikes, and I found it surprisingly tough, in a good way. They are persistent, and you really are forced into using hacks on the fly to evade them, whether it's the bollards to make them crash, or the traffic lights changing to make them crash, or exploding steam pipes to make them crash. Ah, right. All the ways you can hack in a chase is usually simply to make your pursuer crash, and for that, it's pretty shallow. The most interesting ways to hack while being pursued are not in these instances. They're the ability to disrupt a helicopter that's seeking overhead. It's using garage doors to open a way through two buildings and then closing it behind you. It takes timing, it takes skill to hack and maneuver at the same time, and the reward for escaping that way feels incredible. The best way though might be through the blackouts. One of the coolest features advertised in Watch Dogs was the ability to switch off all the lights in a given area of the city at once. Doing so causes cops to lose sight of you and the ability to slip away. It's satisfying, it feels powerful, it's never not delightful. Get it? Once you break line of sight, which is a real thing in this game similar to Assassin's Creed, you have a time limit to stay out of sight. If you manage it by driving carefully or heading into an alley and turning off your engine, you'll be a free man. The issue here is that it's not reliable or consistent enough to be fun all the time. You'll notice that sometimes you're not in anyone's line of sight yet they are still coming after you. You'll notice that when they search for you, the big yellow circles will appear in ways that are completely unavoidable, and so it means detection is forced and the search system is rendered pointless. These are issues, but they aren't issues I found ruined the experience, just made it slightly irritating at points, which is bad. Also, whoever decided you can't point the camera up to see helicopters while driving is worse than the devil himself. Why can't I disable the fucking helicopter? Why won't you let me do it? On the whole though, this fantasy feels great. I love the AI for the cops, their aggression, I love the mechanics of the chases. It really does feel like Assassin's Creed translated to the modern day, from the detection to the chase to breaking line of sight to hiding away until you're incognito again. It's usually pretty glorious, and I think it's one of Watch Dogs' strongest features, although all of this is negated by the fact that you can simply hop in a boat and whoever is pursuing you is no longer an issue, which was probably a major oversight of the design. I can't imagine this was intentional. I often self-impose the restriction of not doing that, but I shouldn't have to. There is another major facet of hacking, which is stealth, and I barely ever used it. You can blow up electronics on the wall or floors to take guys out, although it almost always alerts enemies to your presence, not automatically detecting you but changing into a searching awareness, which feels like a waste just to take out one guy when you could just as easily pop in with your silenced pistol, which is far more quiet. The real use for these is when you couple together laws. If you get a few guys together and then pop off an explosion, you'll take out a big group, and that feels a lot more worth it, although that's about as creative as it ever gets, and playing every single stealth encounter like this isn't the most fun. Once you progress in the skill tree, you're able to hack guards in semi-interesting ways, using grenades on their person to detonate them if you so choose, which is maybe more useful in combat, or to disrupt their comms, meaning you can slip by as they become distracted, which you can do in more ways than one, by texting their phone as someone else to move them off course, get them alone, or slip on by. They're often one-time commands that do very specific things and are predictable as ever. It's not deep, but it can be fun. I often find with stealth mechanics, if you're not going full Hitman or Splinter Cell, then it's best to make your AI dumb. Not because it makes for a better game mechanically, but because it allows for self-expression. How quickly can I take down a room full of idiots? How far can I push it? I enjoy that. I find it fun. and in a game that was all about stealth, it would suck. But Watch Dogs isn't all about stealth, it's merely one component of its gameplay, and it has just enough depth for me to want to try it every time I enter an encounter, and I'd say that's a pretty solid victory. The main way I engage with stealth was through the takedowns of my handy silenced pistol that has insane range and is always the best option. Looking at some of this footage, you might think it looks mindless, and to an extent, you would be right. But that doesn't mean it lacks satisfaction, because it doesn't. The challenge comes from being as aggressive as possible, a stealth reaper as it's often called. Being able to clear a room without being seen isn't hard, but it's just hard enough that you have to bother to think, and that, for me, makes it fun. In a lot of ways, this game is the modern day Assassin's Creed, staying at a distance, using cameras and hacks to spy on people, collecting information, taking out high-profile targets, sneaking into compounds and eliminating foes. There are a lot of parallels here, and that's pretty cool. Wandering through a populated area unseen, yet using your phone to tap into the call of Angelo Tucci's niece so that you can track him down, is the exact sort of assassin fantasy that I love, and it's crazy that I found that in Watch Dogs. So hacking exists. It's often shallow, but it still offers a surprising level of player fantasy on the atmosphere level. So it fails, but it also succeeds. Swings and roundabouts. Typical Ubisoft. One of the core parts of Watch Dogs, though, is its gunplay, which is a little odd for a hacking game that guns are the primary method of engagement and hacking is often secondary. Watch Dogs feels more like a third-person shooter that has hacking more than a hacking game that has shooting, which is a bit of a fundamental problem if the gunplay wasn't so good that I overlook the flaws in the context entirely. At first, it feels like a regular old third-person cover-based shooter, and it is that, if you want it to be, and it's pretty good at it too. You have a decent range of weapons and items to use against a wide variety of enemy types, from your regular blokes to big armoured men that take forever to go down. You can hack environmental objects that both help you take guys down and create extra cover, which is good. But where the combat shines is if you start to play it like you're John fucking Wick. I tried, and on occasion was decimated for trying, but that's what makes it the best way to play. Aiden's low health yet fast action gameplay means that if you're skilled enough and quick enough, you can obliterate your foes, but one wrong move and you're going 6 feet under. It's risk and reward. That is satisfying. Visceral Carnage popularized this style of play through his beautiful John Wick Watch Dogs compilation videos that are well worth a watch. Stringing together your different weapon types and well-timed grenades, hacks, takedowns, and utilizing focus is mechanically engaging as well as visually rewarding. The flashy melee combat takedowns and parkour kills are addictive, and that alone pushed me into this playstyle more than not. It's expressive and it's engaging. This is the way Watch Dogs was meant to be played, and it's the kind of power fantasy that blows GTA out of the water, and I mean that. Never in GTA 5 was I excited to get into another shooting gallery, but in Watch Dogs, I lived for it. Every time I was in a room with a bunch of guys, if I wasn't stealthing, I was doing it as aggressively as possible. And sometimes that took multiple tries, dying repeatedly until I had it all mapped out. But when you get it just right, you feel like a god. This is the gunplay equivalent of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood's combat, but with actual skill involved. Making those connections again, aren't I? Interesting. It's not perfect, and the cover system can sometimes screw you over, but it's not a constant occurrence, and so doesn't diminish the entire experience. And so this method of play usually always shines, whether in the open world or in main missions, which is useful given most of the main missions are pretty typical Ubisoft run-of-the-mill mush. Tail a guy to a place and shoot people, take out a building full of people, infiltrate a building full of people. Oh wait, that's the same thing. Chase someone, be chased by someone. Ubisoft squeezed the most that they could out of their mechanics in missions that are generic and more of the same. Watch Dogs has no particularly memorable set pieces or unique moments that are part of the campaign. It has basically formatted events that play like side missions stitched together. The missions are often unnecessarily restrictive, like all Ubisoft games can be, and there are specific times when it feels aggravating that something you tried to do didn't work, that you weren't allowed to recover from a fumble and had to complete the mission exactly as the devs intended. The most interesting part that I found is when you're helping a gang bloke called Rabbit escape from a heavily guarded area. I fumbled at the last moment, but the game didn't end. I didn't get a game over screen, I was just told to hack his corpse and retrieve the information that I needed. And that's pretty cool. I wish the game did this all the time. It reminded me of the adaptive mission mechanic that Alex Amancio lied about being in Assassin's Creed Unity. It's not as deep as that concept, in fact it's not really deep at all, and for all I know it only appears this once, but I did find it interesting nonetheless. Which speaks to the severity by which the main story missions suffer. There's nothing else worth remembering. Maybe the prison mission? That's novelty, I guess. The first mission is great, obviously, but I already gave that props. Finally infiltrating Rossi Fremont as Aiden is quite a fun one, but nothing I hadn't already done. And the way the final mission takes hacking to the next level is pretty fantastic. It was more the context of the story that made a lot of these missions fun, less than the actual design of the missions themselves, which leaves me with very, very little to actually say.
The same goes for side content. Fixer contracts include Transporter, Decoy, Getaway, and Interception. They are all empty of joy, although the variety does at least keep it fresh. They mainly serve as mundane tasks to get money and absolutely nothing more. It's good that the core gameplay is fun because otherwise they would be totally and completely valueless. I'd argue they already are. Criminal convoys are about what they sound like. A convoy route is given and you have to intercept them and take out a target. That's every single one. They are simultaneously the worst and best mission types. There are two types. One where your target can be killed, and one where they have to be knocked out. If they have to be knocked out, that's when these missions become endlessly fun despite their repetitive setup. You know the route, you have to plan. Set up explosives to take out the escorts, create a blockade in an alleyway, use the environmental hacks to get them stuck. It's up to you, and that makes these missions fun. You're able to play around and experiment. That's quite cool, especially when the core gameplay is so enjoyable. Once you block them off, a gunfight usually ensues, and you have to be ready to adapt to take everyone down. And if you're playing aggressively, like we talked about before, these are the most dynamic and interesting the gunfights get. Enemy AI is clever, and they are aggressive too, using your car as cover, destroying the enemies and getting in close, picking them all off. It's impressive and it's engaging. But they are the total opposite if your target can be killed. You just activate the traffic lights or blow up a steam pipe or use an explosive. In that case, they're empty and pathetic. But even still, you can self-impose rules. Again, you shouldn't have to, but if you do, they're always fun. Although, someone should let Melanie know, I found Olivier, he's alive and well. Oh, never mind. Scratch that one. Gang hideouts offer a similar scenario to the convoys, but without the organic feel. They also offer nothing in the way of context for your actions, but they do put gameplay to the test in well-designed strongholds for you to move through and take down specific assigned targets. These targets are somewhere in the base, and it helps to be stealthy because going in guns blazing often means your target will catch a stray bullet, and they need to be taken down without being killed, which means it pays to play tactically. These are good, I enjoyed them a lot. They push you to use your brain. I like that, it's cool and they're fun. It's also an excuse to use the combat mechanics again, which is always good. But they're really only fun. They aren't deep and they don't mean anything. This is the extent of what they call side missions. The rest are collectibles and minigames. This is all the additional stuff there is to do in Watch Dogs. And blimey, that is a shame. If it wasn't for the strong gameplay, this would be nothing but a disappointment. The strange thing is how these function similarly to random open world objectives you'd find in something like Assassin's Creed. In Valhalla, for example, bandit camps are not side missions, they're just organically in the world, with loot to find and objectives to complete to tick off of a list. They aren't missions. Hell, even in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood that came out 4 years before Watch Dogs, the Borgia Towers are essentially your gang hideouts. You have one target to take out, a restricted area, a tower to destroy to win. But they're organic, and they're open and free, and they aren't activated by a mission prompt and a loading screen. Those that are in Brotherhood are usually a lot more involved and have a story and characters and feel unique. It's strange that Watch Dogs is a more recent game than something like Brotherhood, but it's far more shallow in how it uses its open world, and that's a real shame. You could have added storylines throughout the city, high-profile criminals for Pearce to track down, and stories that explore their roles in the city's underworld, something that feels worthwhile and less mindless. Again, the potential is there, it's just wasted. CTOS towers are this game's version of viewpoints, just without the view, except for this once, that was a nice view. After hacking into a CTOS control point by stealthing through the stronghold and stealing the access key, you're able to find each CTOS tower which defogs the map and provides points of interest, whether side missions or collectibles. These towers, I find, are almost cool. The concept is good. You have to navigate around an area, find the unlock panels, and work your way to unlock the tower, usually climbing in the process. This is good, I have no problems, but most feel incredibly shallow. It's more noticeable when they do things outside of the box. For example, the one where you have to get up onto a railway platform and jump onto a nearby structure to get a better angle and hack in. Or even better, this one where you have to put a car in a container, lift up that container, then drive out to the access point. This stuff is really cool. It's the sandbox part the game had been missing, but sadly they don't do this nearly enough, and a lot of the towers become stale very quickly. Activating the towers allows you access to that region's CTOS. Exploring the city as a vigilante, stopping crimes is one of your main concerns, and your access to CTOS helps with that. When it pings you that there's a crime nearby, you can follow it and hide nearby using the profiler to assess how likely a crime is to occur. Once the crime probability becomes certain, you step in and stop the crime. It sounds good, it often is good, but it's often a mess. You can only intervene when the meter changes from yellow to red, and so you're just staring at this UI the entire time, waiting for the go get 'em prompt instead of actually paying attention to the crime that's happening. There's no player agency here. But also, if you do decide not to pay attention to the UI and pay attention to the actual crime happening, you usually always fail it. On top of this, the morality system prevents you from running them over or gunning them down because it gives you bad morality, and so you have to do a physical takedown. Except, they run just slightly slower than Aiden, and so chases often last minutes, and it sucks all the action and fun out of it because it becomes a complete joke. Not to mention that there's a stark dissonance here. You can be standing, having just hacked into some random NPC's bank account and stolen their college fund, when you see a guy running off with a woman's purse. You can then proceed to beat him to a pulp and the game rewards you for it. What? That doesn't even make sense. How are we measuring morality? Does Aiden genuinely believe it's okay to steal money from people so long as it's through the internet? Come on, guys. I haven't even touched upon the way the game uses morality, though. It does nothing. Okay, not nothing, but basically nothing. When you have low morality, people will notice you and will call the cops on sight. When you have high morality, they won't. So, is it even worth it? I don't particularly think so. Also, on the subject of CTOS crime prevention, the game is seeking to critique Bloom, sparingly, but it does try at points to critique the use of public surveillance. But the game actively shows that public surveillance is accurate at stopping crimes 100% of the time. I don't think that sends a particularly good message about how the citywide surveillance is bad. It would have made far more sense if the CTOS tells you there's a probable crime and you have to watch the situation play out and step in when you think something bad is going down. It would give a sense of player control and the chance to get it wrong, for you to be fallible. That way you feel bad for fucking up, but it also implies that a CTOS crime prevention system is fallible too, and maybe not a benefit to society. But as it stands, it's completely the opposite, and it makes the game look stupid. That all said, and it had to be said, if you play by the game's rules and pretend it makes sense, stopping the crimes from time to time when the rain is pouring down and you're skulking around a dark alleyway certainly feels nice. And maybe that's all you need. It would have been nice to have more, it would have been nice if it made sense, it would have been nice if it all played into a message. But regardless, when the vibes hit, the vibes hit. Now, if you're gagging for more ways to waste your time, you can play AR phone games. There are two of these, NVZN, Invasion, and Cash Run. Invasion is an arcade-like shooter where bugs appear in the world and you shoot the bugs with your digital gun, and that's the whole thing. I got to level 15 or so and quit. Turns out, it goes up to level 100, and what do you get for your trouble? Absolutely fucking nothing. Come on, Ubisoft, what the fuck is this? Cash Run is not quite as bad. I mean, it at least provides something to do, a goal to achieve, and, you know, ends. You essentially run a free run course collecting coins and avoiding the ghosts like it's Pac-Man, which would be good if the parkour wasn't so half-baked. This boils down to just pushing the stick in the right direction and holding down a button, in my case B, to parkour over every obstacle. It's dead and it's boring. Parkour overall in Watch Dogs can look flashy, and sometimes that's nice, but mainly it's an incredibly shallow movement mechanic, even if sometimes you can string together moves that make you go, damn, that's pretty nice. In the case of other mini-games, you have chess challenges, poker, drinking, the shell game, and gambling, which Ubisoft made a lot more immersive in future games by making use of your actual wallet. And by the way, kids, gambling is actually this easy in real life too. These are fine. They add an element of immersion and interactivity, and I think that's fine. I can't be mad at a mini-game for being a mini-game. I just wish this wasn't the extent of the side content. I wish the missions had more stories to tell. I wish there was more depth and variety and substance. I also can't help but feel like these additions detract from the point. What's the point? Is it fun? Maybe a little bit, a push, but like, where's the focus? These should have been cut, and the actual side content should have been made better. Which is easy to say, but blimey, I can't understand why they put dev time into this shit when the core of the side content sucks so bad. What doesn't suck though, are the digital trips. I think these are pretty much always really fun. I love the spider tank, the way it moves and controls, the momentum in your jumps, the tensity and the survival as you try to complete each objective whilst gaining more skills and abilities. This is great, I really like this. Psychedelic has you bouncing on flowers in yellow trousers as you try to rack up a score. This is janky and not really all that fun, I will be honest. Madness is really cool, especially if you enjoy the driving mechanics. It takes place in the fiery pits of hell as you drive around and hit the damned with your car. You get various objectives to complete, and you have to complete them within the time limit to continue. Driving is fun, the objectives are engaging, and it feels addictive to get the highest score. Alone is a stealth-based trip. There are people wandering around with big cameras for heads, and you have to sneak around them to activate specific points to liberate the city. The city being an empty and isolated Chicago, with only the whistling of the breeze as company. This is pretty fun. Conspiracy is a bonus pre-order trip, I believe, where you have to locate the cyborgs in a crowded space and take them out as they walk slowly towards you, hitting the specific weak points to detonate them. Trips are fun and engaging, and generally a nice escape from the moment-to-moment gameplay of the regular game. However, there is so much more to say here. These trips are used as a representation of Aiden's innermost thoughts, his psyche laid bare. You might think I'm reaching, but I'm really not. It's obviously intentional. I think it's actually a bit too on the nose. Alone is a representation of Aiden's insecurities, of his loneliness in a city full of people. What we see in Alone is how he sees it. People everywhere, watching him, a city that needs liberating. And even more, the voice controlling the robot cameraman is Nikki, Aiden's sister, saying he destroyed their family, he's the reason for Lena's death. It's a clear display of insecurity, of guilt, and of the world he inhabits because of that. One that's empty. Madness plays into this. It's his conflict within himself for what happened to Lena. The voice here is Aiden himself, but a darker and twisted version. He's fighting with another version of himself, one that haunts him, that makes him feel small. It's this conflict that drives him across the game. It's this conflict that molds him into the Fox. But also, it's a truth of who he is. Aiden enjoys this. It's not all self-righteous and heroic. He enjoys the killing and the fighting and the power of it all, and that's something he has to fight to keep in check. Playing into this is the spider tank. Power left to grow, left to become insurmountable, similar to what we see with Bloom across the game. The spider tank is power without responsibility, without restraint, and what would come of it if Aiden let himself go entirely. Conspiracy is paranoia, Aiden's obsession with snuffing out crime before it starts, of searching through a crowd for any reason to take action, the feeling that people are always coming for him and his family, and that he has to stop it whatever the cost and however possible. Psychedelic, while the most mechanically dull, is maybe one of the more insightful thematically. Aiden is happy here. He's free of responsibility, guilt, and torment, of all of the things explored in the other trips. He's free, he's flying away from his troubles, and as Lord Anthron points out on Reddit, his clothing palette here matches that of Nikki, his sister. His family is what makes him the happiest. I think that's a really clever analysis, I like that one. I find this fascinating, how well these trips play into the narrative, how well they play into Aiden's journey and give us a deeper understanding of who he is. I love little touches like this, elements that seem innocuous yet work to add greater depth when prodded, and it's interesting that most of that sort of stuff in Watch Dogs isn't part of the main story. It's part of these digital trips and the collectibles that, for me, provided the most worthwhile engagement and context, which absolutely is not like Ubisoft. There are a few different collectibles in the game, from burner phones to QR codes to CTOS breaches, and each reward you with audio logs. Now, the conversation about whether audio logs in the place of actual tangible storytelling is a bad thing is something else entirely, and I'd argue it often is, especially in Watch Dogs where the story falters more often than it doesn't, and where it omits elements that are actually explored in the audio logs. But that doesn't make the contents of these audio logs less valuable or interesting. You get different types of logs and collectibles for doing different types of things, like the investigations, which are split into different categories. Missing persons, where you investigate bodies all over the city with mysterious voice logs detailing his reasoning, leading to an eventual mission where you track him down and take him out. It's really fucking shallow, but that doesn't mean the game doesn't use every part of its atmosphere and context to make it really fucking cool nonetheless. The same goes for the weapons racket and the human trafficking. They end up being busy work to culminate in a really standard run-of-the-mill criminal detection mission or gang hideout. These are the types of investigations I was talking about earlier with regards to side content. These really needed to be fully fleshed out side arcs with stories and characters and stakes and intrigue. Instead, they're simply collectibles with missions that feel hollow and worthless, potential that hasn't been tapped. The most interesting collectibles, though, are the ones that are usually gained from engaging in CTOS breaches. These require you to access a point to start the hack, and once found, in a time limit, hack all of the other points within the vicinity. These are challenging because you have to get the right angle, you have to use cameras, you have to use your environment. It's one of the only times you aren't staring at the minimap, but the actual world itself to figure out the correct place to go to get the hack in the limited time. I actually found these rewarding and engaging. Sometimes it's annoying, I mean, they're only solved through very specific actions, and so there's really no time for player agency, and you do spend a bit of time just wandering around staring at the sides of buildings, hoping that your reticle will snap lock onto a camera somewhere. But I do think, despite that, they work and feel satisfying to solve, especially when to reach the original hack point you end up doing shit like this. This is cool. I like when my games reward my experimentation. Sweet. QR codes are another. DedSec have hidden their manifesto of sorts in QR codes across the city, and to scan them you have to line up different parts of the code perfectly using a specific camera point. I can't fathom who these are for, I guess specifically like Aiden, but still, it's a little odd. All of these different hacking objectives work to make you feel like Batman, which a lot of the game doesn't really do. They're absent of shooting and driving and focus more on the puzzle solving, on piecing together information and of forming a conclusion. They aren't deep mechanically, of course, but they feel immersive within the setting, and I value that despite their lack of depth in how they play. It's the contents of all these logs, though, that I feel are the best part. And before we can discuss that, we need to discuss the story itself. We need to discuss what it's trying to say, how well it says it, and we need to discuss Aiden Pearce. Aiden isn't likable, but that's the point. Unlikable characters don't mean bad characters. I explored as much in my video on Black Flag. Sometimes a character we don't like can be one of the most compelling, and for a story like this, I think it totally is. Morally dubious characters are often preferred when being explored in a passive medium, television or film. Look at characters like Walter White or Henry Hill. People don't take too easily to those types of characters though when we're forced to play as them. I don't just mean characters who are bad guys, otherwise GTA wouldn't be so popular. It's more when they're dubious morally, when they dare to be complex. Some people play games purely to be entertained, to play as a wisecracking hero. And so when you're greeted with a morally grey vigilante grappling with his own trauma and guilt, with family trouble and a misplaced desire for nothing but revenge, some people switch off. But I was absolutely switched on. Aiden is the sort of character who makes you think, who makes you take a step back to look at the bigger picture and ask if what he's doing is right, and what it means for him as a person. You could say this is a basic revenge story, and that's classic Ubisoft, and in some ways it is, but the revenge isn't just a motivation for the plot to move, the revenge is the crux of the narrative, of the story, of the themes, and of the character we're controlling, and that makes it impactful. I'm not saying they nail it, but I am saying their intent wasn't fundamentally flawed. How is Aiden dubious though? I mean, he's a guy who's out to take down the people who killed a child after all, doesn't sound super dubious to me. It's in his actions. Aiden's motives and goals aren't necessarily the flawed part, it's how he interacts with achieving those goals. Aiden is unreliable. He lies to his sister, telling her he'll stop the search for those responsible, but secretly it's all he does. He spies on his family to keep them safe, but violating their privacy in the process and exploiting CTOS to do so, something he condemns all the time, yet when he's in control, it's fair game. Aiden knows best, but others never do. He's controlling, he's stubborn, and he's manipulative. He uses his clear understanding of human psychology to intimidate, to make people do things for him. And to us as a viewer, it's sometimes pretty repugnant. But as an analyst, it's damn meaningful. People have been saying this since the game came out. I mean, it's what a lot of the fans have always said is one of the coolest parts, is that what he does to tech, he also does to people. And it helps us to see the ways the exploitation of CTOS is bad through a lens that we can understand. Aiden is an exploration of how trauma changes people, how dealing with grief and loss and the guilt of that loss can impact someone, and how that intersects with the lives of those around them. Where there's grief and where there's trauma, everything is connected. I've seen one of the major criticisms is that Aiden is a boring character because you can't imagine him in a world where he isn't a vigilante, where he has friends and family and works a job or eats meals, but I think that's precisely what makes him so compelling. It's been long enough. We can't ignore the parallels any longer. Aiden is the Batman grappling with the loss of Bruce Wayne. He pretends to be the man he was and is expected to be in between indulging in the man he's become. The Fox. Over the course of the game, we see Aiden trying to tap back into who he was with the connections he has to Jackson and Nikki, but he's losing that side of himself. It died when Lena did, and the Fox was born. That's who Aiden is now, and that man is pushing away his family, which isn't necessarily a negative. The game doesn't think so either. It critiques Aiden's actions, but never condemns them outright. There's always a part of us that sees Aiden as necessary, similar to how we see the Batman as necessary. I think if it turned out any of our friends or family were chastising their emotions and pushing away human connections in favour of going out at night and hunting down criminals, maybe dressed as a giant bat, we'd take issue with that. We'd ask them to seek help. But when it's not someone close to us, that distinction becomes blurred, and we're glad that someone out there is doing what many cannot. And Aiden Pearce is that sort of character. The issue here, though, is that I don't think the game understands this, or particularly cares about this. While Aiden is the most interesting character in the game, he's maybe the only interesting character in the game, and his character development or understanding of himself and his grief is always secondary to the stuff that the game has happening. like Nikki being kidnapped for 70% of the game, or infiltrating Iraq's hideout 3 separate times in different ways, or tracking down the man who's supposed to be the bloke that invented CTOS. The game has Aiden, an interesting character, going through events and scenarios that are not, and are often bloated to an insane degree. Honestly, I forgot just how long this game is, and so we're left with a bit of a mess. A game that's whole plot is a whole lot of nothing, following thread after thread to find out who was responsible for the death of Lena, a goal that becomes distant and twisted the more you get swept up in pursuing the myriad different arcs that happen as a result of your search. It just sucks that these arcs are not all that interesting. Okay, that's not entirely true. They have moments of intrigue, but Watch Dogs never tries to do enough with it. It sometimes also just makes little sense, like Iraq sparing Bedbug after looking for reasons to kill him just missions prior, or Nikki not knowing we're the vigilante until she puts the pieces together. I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. For the whole game, everyone knows what the vigilante looks like. And it's not as if, like Batman, Aiden wears different clothes in different settings. He's always wearing his trench coat and hat. He just sometimes pulls up his mask to cover half of his face. And look, if that wasn't obvious enough, our name was plastered across the news about 3 missions ago. Come on, Nikki, this is insane. It starts off strong, but quickly ties itself in knots as it goes. I don't care about Iraq. I don't care about Lucky Quinn. I don't care about Damian Branks. I wish I did, but I just don't. They're all uninteresting, mustache-twirling villains with no nuance. They exist to push the plot along. It's a good thing the performances are usually great and the dialogue is actually well written, because beyond being entertaining to watch in cutscenes, they're entirely one note. Which makes it interesting that the opposite side of the fence is anything but. One of the strengths that Watch Dogs has is its cast of friendly characters, how they function to greater explore Aiden himself across the game. Bad Boy 17 is the first ally we meet, but we quickly discover that she is not a boy, and not 17, thankfully, although she is bad. Clara Leal is a well-written and well-acted character who works as a decent mirror to Aiden in a lot of ways. She's far more measured and incredibly smart. They work well as a team, and she allows us to peer deeper into who Aiden is as he opens up. She, though, has complex motivations behind her helping us. She played a crucial part in what led to the death of Lena. She was trying to wash her hands of what happened. She was the one leaving flowers on Lena's grave. And she dies for it. It's tragic, it's genuinely sad, and yet another casualty in Aiden's quest for revenge. It allows us to see loss in a context that has impact. I mentioned him before, but we team up with the man who invented CTOS, Raymond Kenny, now going by T-Bone, which I can't lie, I forgot about this before this replay, so that came as a plot twist to me. I gasped, actually, audibly gasped. While his arc does span perhaps too many missions, and is a distraction from the core story and even the plot by this point, it is fun, because T-Bone's fun. This is actually what goes on in my head when I'm deep past the point of intoxication. T-Bone isn't just a funny guy either, although he is a funny guy that contrasts well with Aiden's more serious nature. He's also the guy who caused the Northeast blackout of 2003, which I didn't know until researching this was actually a real thing. Very Assassin's Creed of you, Ubisoft. We'll touch base on that in a little bit. Raymond is regretful, guilty, and feels shame for the 11 people who died as a result, and because of that, it brings him depth, because Aiden too feels guilt for what happened to Lena, because as much as he refuses to admit it, he's responsible as well. Geordie is the first guy we meet, and he's charismatic and entertaining in equal measure, and like T-Bone, he works to contrast with Aiden. He likes killing people, he does it for a living, and he does it for us. But by the end, we find out it wasn't out of loyalty, it was just business, when he turns on us entirely. There might not be any particular depth, but there is nuance. This extends even to characters like Bedbug, who I found myself attached to after the game explored his nuanced side, through his grandmother, his motivations, and his understanding of Aiden's position. It allowed me in and allowed me to feel sympathetic to him, and maybe that was helped by Iraq having absolutely no nuance. It's not difficult to get on the side of someone like Bedbug when the man he has issues with is entirely unambiguously bad. The best part of this story is that ironically, despite his actions, Aiden for most of the game views the world through a black and white lens, that there are evil people and there are good people, and that he's one of the good. He's entirely self-absorbed, and so to an extent, we see the world that way too. I mean, it's a video game, there are bad guys and there are good guys. But through the exploration of those he sees as good or evil, we come to understand nuance is important, and that nuance extends to actions outside of your own. This is done through characters like Bedbug. We meet him as your basic gangster trope character, but we slowly learn he's as real and authentic as we are. They do this too with Clara and with Geordie in the opposite direction, like I already explored. Everyone is black and white until they aren't, until you see the connections. I just wish this extended to antagonists, but I can't bring myself to give a modicum of shit about Damian Branks. It's a shame then that Damian Branks is the climax of this story. Things culminate as you finally rescue Nikki in a sequence I thought was mechanically average but narratively impactful. She is frightened and complex. She wants to escape, yet still has empathy for the man she shot out of fear because Aiden got her into the situation and put the gun in her hand. In any other game, Nikki would be angry until she isn't, or compliant until she's the opposite. But in Watch Dogs, strangely, she's incredibly complex. She's scared and she's concerned for her son. She's angry at Aiden, she's frustrated in the situation, but also, she's sad that she's losing her brother, that she has to leave her home. She wishes him well, and she lets him say goodbye to Jackson. Because real relationships are complex. Real relationships can't be dropped in mere seconds. She's disappointed in what happened to Aiden, but that doesn't translate to outright hatred. It translates to complexity, because they have a whole history we've never seen. And this character development was actually shocking in a game that often leaves itself pretty flat. Following this, discovering the one who ordered the hit on us that killed Lena was none other than Lucky Quinn, a character who appeared in the game twice before this moment. We head to his hotel, the Murloc, to take him down. Where everything began, everything ends. This infiltration mission is one of the more fun missions in the game. I will say it's more of the same, shooting guys in an arena, but that's not a criticism. Shooting guys in an arena is what Watch Dogs is good at, and I loved every second. With the added context of rushing through the building to get to the man responsible for all of this, it felt good, it felt tense, it felt engaging. This is a successful climax mechanically and emotionally, but how does it actually fare narratively? We reach Quinn. He's behind bulletproof glass, but bulletproof glass isn't hacker-proof glass, and luckily for us, Quinn has a pacemaker, and Aiden can use the CTOS to take him down, slowly and painfully. The same CTOS system that gave Quinn power, that allowed him to manipulate Mayor Rushmore. With the video evidence, we discover that he killed Rose Washington, another hacker out to expose Bloom, as we find in her audio logs. That same CTOS is what brings down Quinn. There's a poetry there, I suppose. All of this was because of a misunderstanding. When Aiden was on his heist, Quinn thought he was trying to steal the video evidence of the mayor committing murder, a video Quinn was using as blackmail to keep himself in power. All of this surveillance, all of this deceit, all of these people trying to cling to power is what got Lena killed. I don't know if that's tragic, or tragically funny. Maybe both. In another story, this is where Aiden would turn over a new leaf, realizing revenge didn't get him what he wanted, that he still feels hollow. But not so here. Aiden says as much. He finally feels awake. He finally feels like he can breathe. This isn't the game saying revenge is good though. This is the game saying Aiden is so far gone and this is who he is now. He got his revenge. He took out the man responsible. He's the Fox now. The same way finding Joe Chill doesn't bring back Bruce Wayne, it does the opposite. The Batman takes over. And the comics often critique that. Heck, the games and films do as well. Batman is not a symbol of hope and heroism all the time. He's more often a symbol of fear. But a necessary fear that the people of Gotham ignore the pitfalls of because they need him, and so too does Chicago need the Fox. This is where Aiden finally kills all remaining memories of who he was before. No longer looking back, no longer regretting, Aiden is gone, and only the vigilante remains. I really like this because it's not the usual revenge story. This is a story that doubles down on the path Aiden is treading. A path that maybe isn't a good one, but because of how society is a path that we need him to walk. His sacrifice for our liberty. We head out, we escape, we find Clara and she overdoses on bullets, and we head back to base. Aiden speaks one last time to T-Bone and uploads all the files, exposes everyone, the mayor, Bloom employees, the lot. Damien isn't happy about this. He wanted that information himself, to control the people, to blackmail, to give himself power, and so it's finally time to deal with him. He's inside CTOS, he has full access, and that's bad. This mission is genuinely pretty fantastic. You head from point to point on the map to install a backdoor into CTOS because the only way to find Damien is to shut it off and reboot it, meaning we're forced to reenact the blackout of 2003 to stop Damien, the choice of killing more innocent people to stop Damien from having this unfathomable power. I wish I could say I cared, but sadly I don't, not about Damien and not about the blackout. It's cool, don't get me wrong, Damien using all the CTOS against us, the blackout of the entire city, the tension of the chase, but the context isn't there. Damien is a flimsy pantomime antagonist. The dissonance in our actions across the game with the moral implications of the blackout don't line up. How many people have we killed? Too many to count. I entered the game with close to menace reputation, meaning I'd murdered tons of innocent people. You're telling me that I should care that a few might die in the blackout? That's clearly never mattered to me before. Aiden goes on this quest to avenge the death of Lena by probably doing the same thing to so many families. For someone whose life was altered forever by a car crash, he sure has no issues bombing down the highway and ramming whoever gets in his way. There's too great a dissonance in a story without depth to make any of this matter. It doesn't help either that when the blackout happens, it's cool for all of 10 seconds until you look at the people and they're not reacting. Just going about their normal routines, cars on roads. It really breaks the immersion of the moment. You could have had car pileups, people running around, chaos in the streets, but the only change is that the lights are off now. We head to the lighthouse, we confront Damien, we kill Damien, the game ends.
I don't look back anymore. I don't regret. I look forward. Everything is connected, and I'll use that to expose, to protect, and if necessary, to punish.
I find these final lines pretty chilling, because like I said, Aiden's finally shed who he is to become someone new. He is only a vigilante now, and he's a shell of who he was. He's traded in humanity for retribution, and that's frightening what happened to this man. He spent all this time trying to right a wrong because he feels immense guilt because of Lena's death. In doing so, he uncovers more than he could have imagined. The entire seedy underbelly of the city, and killing Quinn was justified, not just from a revenge angle. The men at the top, the ones controlling the system, the ones bartering under the table, the ones like Quinn and Iraq and Damien, those are the ones who matter, not the men acting in their name. Not men like Maurice Vega. Over the course of the game, you can find 8 different logs from Maurice. You can hear of what led to the killing of Lena Pearce and what happened afterwards. He tried to get out of the life. He was threatened to the point that he had to go and deal with Pearce, hoping that would let him get out. He shot the tire because he couldn't bring himself to kill Pearce, seeing he was with a little girl. He wanted the car to crash. He wasn't thinking. It did crash. Lena died. Her lifeless body haunts him every day. Quinn needed to send a message. Failing the job wasn't acceptable. Instead of killing Maurice, they took his girlfriend and sold her into the same human trafficking ring we witnessed in the game. It's horrible, it's harrowing, it's dark. Maurice is a victim maybe more so than Aiden is. As much as he's the one who pulled the trigger, he's not to blame, and what to do with that information falls on us. After the credits roll, Aiden has a choice.
I want to say we're different, but I don't know anymore. How many people have I hurt? Killed? Who deserves to die? Who decides that?
Shoot Maurice or walk away. The only real choice here for me is to walk away. Like Aiden says, they've become too similar. There isn't much between them, and to kill Maurice would be to solidify Aiden as the monster he aims to stop. If Aiden deserves a second chance, then so does Maurice. And okay, so is this the extent of the game's message? If so, why? Why set your game in a modern dystopian city, a place controlled by corporation where your information is bought and sold without your knowledge, and then never seek to confront that? I think Aiden's story is great. I really enjoy his journey. I think his character is complex and meaningful. But why is it so irrelevant to the core concept of the game? Why is Bloom not the major focus? Why is it all background noise to a revenge story that meanders for 25 hours? I don't know why, but I do know there is more, and honestly, I think this is one of the major points of wasted potential, because everything the game needed is already here. It's just trapped in audio logs and collectibles. DedSec is a major component of the game. Clara is part of DedSec, and she gives you access to their specific hacking types, which gives you a wider range of control over the city relatively early on. DedSec are always popping up with messages on the news, on the TVs, and their presence is heavily felt. The main way we observe DedSec is through their manifesto of audio logs scattered around the city in oddly placed QR codes. I'm not sure how nobody noticed someone put this here, but I'll let that slide. Their audio logs speak to very real and widespread issues. Some have more depth than others, from political corruption and voter biases to corporate control, and some that just say social media is bad. Which is true, but... And hey, they clearly don't even believe that one. These, though, are the seeds of interesting themes, of taking the setting and saying something worth saying, of dissecting our modern society through a context that is nowhere near far from reality. These logs work to illuminate who Bloom truly are, to allow people to figure it out for themselves. They're actually incredibly clever. People cannot be told what to think. They have to be guided, they have to be nudged, but they have to think they realize the truth for themselves. Because waking up from reality is not an easy thing to do, especially when it's so damn comfortable. Your tax dollars have paid for your own muzzle and cage. They speak of banding together, of working as a unit, of creating an army of civilians to rise up against Bloom and reclaim freedom. Now, where this comes into play in the story is just as you head to black out the city. DedSec asks Aiden to let them in, to plant their own backdoor into the system so they can be the watchdogs, silent heroes working through the CTOS. But Aiden says no. That despite their self-aggrandizing, the only true recourse for the systems that oppress is freedom, whether that brings chaos or peace. Holy shit. And so this brings us onto Bloom, onto Bellwether, and onto how this feels like the wasted potential of something more than just Watch Dogs. Bellwether is mentioned by T-Bone at the end of the game. It's a dangerous algorithm according to him, but we can learn more. As we work to complete CTOS breaches, we're told more and more by Angela Ballack, the woman working for Bloom who replaced Raymond Kenny after he was kicked out for discovering the true sinister workings behind the CTOS. Angela talks about how Bloom does good things. They fund social programs and medical research. They are real. They do good. But that doesn't mean Bloom has only good intentions. In fact, they rarely do. But it does mean they seem to care about people regardless of how CTOS might look. We hear some recordings from Ray, the way he talks about Bloom, the way they'd attempt to completely homogenize culture, how every city in the world will become the same city ruled by the same faceless corporate overlords, where they control the politics, the people, they control the news, they control everything. That's the goal of Bloom, and that's the goal of CTOS. How? Using Bellwether, the leading sheep of a flock with a bell on its neck. Bellwether works as a prediction algorithm and subliminal messaging system on a city-wide scale, and if CTOS is successful enough, on a worldwide scale. Using this algorithm, it works as a means to predict the best ways to influence large numbers of people. To test this, Angela fed in the Fibonacci sequence. The Bellwether then automatically calculates how best to subliminally message it to the people all over the city. People from all different walks of life will have it suggested in different ways, but no matter the method, it worked. The most common lottery numbers were the Fibonacci sequence. The city echoed it back. All of this is so deeply interesting, but the kicker for me is, well, let me ask you a question. Does this remind you of anything? Anything at all? Let me spell it out. It's more clear than ever that during 2014, regardless of what transpired in the years since, Watch Dogs was supposed to be a component of Assassin's Creed. Since it came out, Ubisoft have always denied a connected universe, and Watch Dogs 2 and Legion perpetuate this line of thought, with Ubisoft appearing in Watch Dogs 2 and the Legion crossover being explicitly non-canon fun. Well, probably not that fun, I mean it is Watch Dogs Legion. But I find the evidence in Watch Dogs far too blatant to be nothing. There was, once upon a time, intent here. We have the obvious lore points of crossover, the more simple pieces of evidence, Olivier Garneau being in Watch Dogs and then not showing up again in Assassin's Creed 4 after going to Chicago for a business meeting. You have Abstergo employees in Watch Dogs, a video of a kid and his dad playing an Assassin's Creed game, which we know Abstergo Entertainment make. Probably Pirates of Nightmares, to be honest. But it goes so much deeper than superficial Easter eggs, even if the Olivier one is pretty damn stark. In Assassin's Creed 4, you can find that Bloom is a subsidiary of Abstergo Industries, working on surveillance in major cities, currently Chicago. But what I find more damning is how they are thematically and mechanically connected. During this video, I've listed ways the game plays like Assassin's Creed, from the glass cannon combat to the line of sight chases, the blending in and hacking from a distance. But on top of that, you have a major corporation like Bloom that seeks domination over the world being fought back against by DedSec, a group dedicated to protecting the world from those who would oppress. But similarly to Assassin's Creed 1, Aiden, like Altair, sees their organization as dogmatic, as wrong too, and that nobody should have the ability to be a watchdog, at least not in an organized sense. Individualism wins out over collectivism, freedom over hierarchical power structures, and my god, if that's not Assassin's Creed. Aiden lives in a city that feels oppressive, working to fight back against people who would cause harm. Disagreeing with corporate control and the mentality of a collective like DedSec, Aiden fights for freedom. My god, he's one step away from becoming an assassin. But that's not all there is, because Bellwether, while very clearly a tool the Templars would desire, is not just that. It's also, in so many ways, a modern recreation of the first Civ's ability to predict and control through technology. Abstergo, through Bloom, are working to create something that dominates the world without needing the pieces of Eden. This to me is Watch Dogs' biggest missed potential. The themes and exploration of those themes in these audio logs are superb, and not only are they resonant within the context of Watch Dogs, they imply so strongly a greater connection to Assassin's Creed. I've always said Assassin's Creed needed to have spin-offs. To sustain itself long term, it needed room for games like Odyssey and Valhalla without compromising what Assassin's Creed is, and Watch Dogs is a perfect example of that, tying the story of Aiden Pearce into a grander one about the society we exist in, and tying that back around to the messages of Assassin's Creed. I think it's incredibly clever. A connected universe not founded on cameos and crossovers and cheap tricks, but founded on thematic harmony, very similarly to how Remedy would do it in the years later with Alan Wake and Control. And it sucks that all of this, all the critique of Bloom, all the links to DedSec and their illumination of society, all the themes that resonate within Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs itself, are all hidden away, trapped in audio logs. Everything is connected, but it's rarely ever seen. It's a shame how much of this was all mismanaged. It's a shame Ubisoft can never seem to do anything right, even when all the pieces are already there. And it's a shame that Watch Dogs will never be anything more than wasted potential. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then I've made a companion video on the Watch Dogs DLC Bad Blood exclusively on Patreon. Every time I make a major scripted project here, I like to make another video exclusively to Patreon. What are you doing? For AC4, I did Freedom Cry, and for Watch Dogs, I've done Bad Blood. Patreon has become instrumental in helping me create videos. A couple years ago, I never could have imagined buying tons of different books and spending lots of time reading up on things and researching and creating things to the scale I did with the Black Flag video. And so because of that, I like to put in a little bit more extra effort towards the end of a project to make another video specifically just for patrons supporting me over there. But it's not just that. Between major projects, I also post lots of other things on Patreon as well, from audio commentaries to podcasts to lower effort videos on different topics. I'm honestly really proud of what I've built over there over the last 16 months. Get out of my bin, stop this. And I really can't thank the people enough for supporting me over there. It just has changed the way I make videos, and it's allowed me so much more freedom and the ability to be more in-depth with the stuff that I make. And so for that, I'm just huge thank you to those people. And of course, a big thank you to my Patreon producers. I've got the list here. Cabbage, Dildog, Jake Durbin, Arenathon, Callum Thefmus Kelly, Damien the Not So Orange Gnome, Demi, Flash Paradox, Luke Pearce, Nathan L. Garcia, and Rolands. Thank you guys so much, and thank you to everyone else supporting me on Patreon. It means the world. And for everybody else, thank you so much for watching this video. I really do hope you enjoyed and found it insightful or interesting or entertaining or, you know, whatever. I think I have a few, like, smaller projects sort of that I'm working on or working towards sort of while in the background I've currently started playing Cyberpunk, which is going to be a pretty big video. It's not really going to be the typical, oh, here's how Cyberpunk has changed over the years, because I think that's a little bit dry. What I really wanted to do was take Cyberpunk and cut through the distractions of all the added features and patches and changes and just be like, what is this game actually trying to say? Because yes, Cyberpunk has undergone a great redemption arc, but the redemption is not, oh, now it has this feature. The redemption is now you can see the game for what it's trying to say. Now there aren't any distractions. There aren't those game-breaking bugs anymore. The game is in a shape where now we can actually look at it and analyze it for what it's really trying to say at its core. And so the video really is aiming to get to what is the beating heart of Cyberpunk? What is the game all about? Because I've not really seen an overabundance of that. I'm sure people have analysed it, I'm sure people have talked about it in that way, but I often see dominating the conversation on Cyberpunk is people talking about the fact that, oh, it's got this new thing, or oh, finally this thing was patched, or they fixed this, or they tweaked this. And look, those things are great, don't get me wrong. CD Projekt Red has done an amazing job bringing the game up to snuff and adding in all the features that it needed to make the game better. But I think that that's missing the point, because why did they decide to salvage Cyberpunk? Why did they do what they did? Yeah, for one point it's for their bottom line, but also it's because they obviously care about the story they're telling, the world they were building, and the message they're trying to convey. So I want to make a video to really look at that, deep dive into it, and analyze it as best as I can. I don't know when it will come out, because I think it's going to be a big video. This is my first ever playthrough of the game. Currently I'm about 25 hours in. I'm fucking loving it. And I can't wait to get to work on getting a skeleton done, noting everything up, and writing a script for this, because I think it's going to be so interesting to delve into what this game is saying. There's so many little details, world building, the visual storytelling. Oh my goodness, I could be here all day just talking about it, but I'll write a video and then I'll talk about it. As with my Black Flag project as well, I have a bunch of books that I'm reading for the Cyberpunk video as well. Direct inspiration, things that have parallels and links, stuff, you know, from the Cyberpunk genre as well. So it's gonna be a bit hefty, but we'll get there at some point. There's some other things I want to make too. And just to reiterate, I couldn't do that without Patreon and sponsors like Manta Sleep, because, you know, ad revenue is so temperamental. You never know if it's going to be high or low, or what's going to happen with views or whatever, and it's to not have to worry too much about that anymore is pretty great. It really has been liberating to be able to just be like, I want to make a video on this and I'm going to make it to the best of my ability, and I don't need to compromise, whereas years gone by I did. So I really appreciate that slight breathing room I have now. Anyways, I won't keep you, sorry. Just fucking talking your ear off here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting me, and I'll see you soon for more stuff. I'm sure I'll have a couple more videos before the Cyberpunk one, but that's the next major landmark video, I think. So we'll see. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.